before we jump into the webinar. All slides will be sent out after the webinar and emailed to you, as well as all of the documents which we mentioned that you will be able to download from this webinar will be emailed to you after this presentation. Additionally, if you could hold all questions until the end of the presentation, we'll be happy to walk through any questions that come through at the end of the presentation there. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump on in and introduce myself. I'm Ryan Lindsay. I am a digital strategist here with Converge Consulting. I am a graduate of the TIPI MBA program, but I got my start in higher education working for the University of Iowa. I've had my hand in Google Analytics since roughly 2010, but I am Google Analytics certified and extremely excited to be talking to you about campaign tracking today. I'll introduce Rachel. Rachel, you there?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Ryan. I'm going to give myself a true Aggie introduction here. So I'm Rachel DOHMANN. I'm the proudest member of the Fight Texas Aggie class of 2007. I am the marketing manager at BenQ America Corporation. We're a Taiwanese-based electronics company, and we sell computer monitors and projectors, digital signage, and things like that. Immediately prior to my position here at BenQ, I started here in October 2015. I was with the Texas A&M Foundation for about 8 years. I was overseeing digital marketing efforts, including the website, social media, and all of that. I first met with Converge in the fall of 2014, I think it was, at a conference workshop on Google Analytics in Philadelphia. And after that, I signed up and worked with them on Google Analytics for the next year, probably more than a year, to help implement Google Analytics on the launch of our new website.
Thanks for joining us, Rachel. For those of you who have not introduced ourselves to Converge, just to give you a brief introduction to us, Converge is a digital agency that focuses specifically on higher education. We specialize in inbound marketing, which includes website redesign, content strategy, digital advertising, SEO, and our favorite subjects today, Google Analytics. For our agenda today, we'll be walking through a little bit of an overview of campaign tracking, making sure everyone's on even footing. And we'll also be jumping into governance strategy for campaign tracking, making sure that everyone knows exactly how to best implement campaign tracking with proper governance, reporting on campaigns using dashboards, segmenting data using your campaigns, making sure that you can take a deeper dive into all of your data using those segments built off of your campaign information. And we'll also walk through a case study. Rachel has had some excellent experience with campaign tracking at Texas A&M at the foundation, and we'll make sure that we give you a real-life example as to how this can be implemented in your institution. Before we get started, I did want to make the slight caveat that one of the things that we'll be assuming as we go through this presentation is that you've gone through your analytics, you've set up all of your analytics in a way that you are reporting on data that is accurate and mapping towards goals. So we've gone through with A&M in this instance a subdomain mapping exercise. We've also made sure we've removed all self-referrals by tagging all of the appropriate URLs with our Google Tag Manager snippet. And we've actually mapped out all of the goals that we want to actually have users converting upon. It's these goals that we'll be driving our campaigns towards. So getting started with a campaign tracking overview, we want to make sure that we understand what campaign tracking is. Google Analytics has its default channel groupings that direct traffic of people who are coming directly to your website by typing our URL in, people who are finding your website from organic search just by entering a search term or phrase in organic search, whether it be Google, Yahoo, Bing, still out there and used quite frequently actually. Referrals, so people coming from other websites, emails, paid if you're doing any Google advertising or other advertising online. But how do we make this fit our marketing needs? We aren't necessarily doing everything online, and some of those channels we want to make sure we can customize. So we actually use this campaign tracking when we're posting items on social media, when we're going to LinkedIn or YouTube. If you're pushing out an email blast, we've also had campaign tracking used for things such as offline marketing, making sure that you're using campaign tracking in a view book or on print material that's being distributed with a vanity URL that will redirect to a campaign tracked URL so that you're able to prove exactly how many people came from that view book, went to your website, and completed your website's goals. What is it? It's really a lot simpler than it sounds. So campaign tracking is simply the creation of a long URL or a query string at the end of a URL by copying and pasting, quite literally copying and pasting the URL that you want to send individuals to into a URL builder, a campaign tracked URL builder, with the source, medium, a campaign name, which are all required, and other campaign content or campaign terms. The Google Analytics config or GA config, a Raven tool resource is extremely helpful in this regards if you want to look for a free online tool. One of the things we're actually offering out of today's webinar is an Excel spreadsheet that Rachel has been kind enough to put together that will actually build these URLs for you and track these URLs using an Excel spreadsheet. There really are 3 or 4 facets to this campaign tracking. The source, which is really the brand name as to where people are coming from, Facebook, the newsletter, Google, etc. The medium, which is the bucket of what that source is in. So in Facebook's case, social, because it's a social media channel. And then the campaign. This is really identifying what marketing push are you trying to associate this URL with. Is this associated to your fall 2016 marketing admissions push? Is it related to your spring alumni engagement catalog? And lastly, this is really where you can dive in, the content, and make sure that you have some custom messaging. So you really identify what your message is, what element are you trying to drive users to, whether it be a specific demographic or a banner item or a button, whether that be a specific Facebook post. So much as that. The reason the 3 first, source, medium, and campaign, are starred is that those are actually required in terms of your campaign reporting. In order to make sure that analytics reports on these in a way that will actually be impactful for your data, you have to include a source, medium, and campaign. Where you can take it that step further is by using that content. So jumping in, let Rachel take over the governance strategy here.
Thank you. Okay, let's see if this worked. Oh, maybe.
Make sure you have it. There you go, Sheesh.
Okay, it might have worked now. Let's try. Okay, so what you really want to think about when you're starting to put together a campaign tagging plan, and again, this is assuming that you've had all of your pieces put together from the back end on Google Analytics. So you really want to start by developing a standardized naming structure. If you can collaborate with your colleagues to create that standardized structure for your college department or your unit before you start using the campaign tags in your Facebook posts and your emails and things like that, that's really the best thing to do. Because what you're going to be able to do is then, Ryan's going to touch on this later, but you'll be able to segment out the traffic on your site from the Google Analytics side using these tags to really separate out the data. So if you want to be able to look at all email campaigns together compared to one another, you want to make sure that you're using no E-mail or anything like that. You want to make sure everybody's on the same page, so you have the same naming structure. And thinking about a utopian society here, if you use proof of concept in your college department or your program, you might even be able to convince the others on your campus to join in and have one big naming structure for the whole university. And if you can get on the same Google Analytics, property or whatever for your institution, it really would be interesting to see all the traffic coming through there in one view and using the same sorts of tags. So some of the rules that I've come up with, and I've written a blog post for Converge as well, kind of more detailed about what campaign tagging means, how to put it together, or when to use them, when not to use them. And I think Ryan's going to send a link to everybody who's here later, so you can go back and follow up and get a little bit more detailed into this. And I have the rules there. So rule number 1, I say, is lowercase everything. As you can see in the circle, in the red circle on this slide, you have email with a capital E, email with a lowercase e. In Google Analytics, it takes things that are cased separately, cased differently, and treats them as completely different tags. You want to make sure that all your categories are the same. So the easiest, simplest rule to bring to the table is just lowercase everything. Makes everything simpler. You don't have to worry about case structure. So rule number 2 that I use is you use hyphens between words. So if you want to say, the spring choral show, you can use all lowercase, spring -choral -show. So it just simplifies the process, no confusion, and then it keeps gaps from being within your URLs as well. So then let's take a look. If I can get it to go to the next slide. So this is an example of the spreadsheet that I used when I was at the Texas A&M Foundation. My rule number 3 is document everything, right? So this kind of shows you what the spreadsheet that I put together for you looks like that Ryan is going to send out. You have your short links, your original URLs. You keep everything in there. And as you can see, everything is lowercase. There's hyphens between everything, and there's a simplified naming structure. If you do a specific article that you're pushing on social media, but you're putting it on multiple platforms, use the same content for it, the same campaigns, and then just change the source from Facebook to Twitter to LinkedIn. So all of those campaigns that you're running have similar naming structures, and you're just changing the source from where it's coming from. What this will allow you to do also is you can go back at any time and say, oh, I want to see what the result of this email campaign was, but I don't remember what I tagged it. If you're keeping track in your spreadsheet of all of your tags, you'll be able to go back and look exactly and see what the tags were so that you can pull it in the back end of Google Analytics. I think I had about 1,300 rows after about a year at the Texas A&M Foundation before I left. So don't be intimidated. It looks like a lot, but I promise the spreadsheet that I put together for Ryan is really going to help you and reduce human error because I put a concatenation code in there for Excel. So don't be intimidated. You definitely want to hop in there and use that to document. So let's see. So then we talked a little bit about the URL shorteners. There's a bunch of different ones you can use. If you're using Hootsuite for your social media scheduling and things like that, you can use that. There's also free things like Bitly. I really use these to reduce the likelihood of human error and user error when you're copying over from your spreadsheet to your email, to your social media platform or something like that. I reduce them. The shorter it is, the less likelihood there is to have errors in there. So if you're lucky enough to be at a university where you have a customized URL shortener, Texas A&M, for example, has the tx.ag. So it's a little something extra fun, that we were able to use when I was there as well. And I'm not sure how many institutions use HubSpot. HubSpot has a tracking feature in there to shorten the URLs, and you can put all the pieces in there as well. I use HubSpot now at my organization, and I think Ryan uses that at Converge as well. But there's another option for tracking your URLs there. Now I'm going to hand it back over to Ryan, and he's going to talk about some dashboards and reporting.
Yeah, so thank you, Rachel. The nice thing about campaign tracking URLs, you get all of those shortened URLs out there, you place them on your ads, you have all of your Facebook posts redirecting to a campaign tracked URL. Okay, well now what? What do we do with all of that data? It will start to roll in. It will start to come in so that you see all of your campaigns and how many sessions each of your campaigns are driving. More importantly, if you have all of your goals set up, you'll see all of the goal conversions that each of your campaigns are driving to. That's really one of the reasons we're talking about this today, right? It's improving ROI by making sure the campaigns are driving on a goal. However, as much as I know my boss, Ann, loves data, I think if I send her a spreadsheet like this, there might be some repercussions, and we want to make sure that we don't present data that is overwhelming, so we consolidate all that data using a nice dashboard. Dashboards are wonderful tools in analytics to be able to place widgets within a certain dashboard, a shared or public or private dashboard. So you can either keep it for yourself or you can share it with everyone else who has analytics access. And then you can actually schedule these dashboards to be emailed out on a daily, weekly, monthly, or even annual basis. So you'll be able to set up all this information in a nice consolidated dashboard and just send it out via an email that's already been automated for you, and it just recurs on whatever time basis you would like to set up. You can make these dashboards, like I said, because they're completely customizable, but depending on what widgets you place within a dashboard, either campaign specific, as you see in the upper left-hand side, which is very dedicated to how many people are coming from a specific newsletter, where are they coming from, what's their bounce rate, how quickly are they leaving the site, to more of an overall campaign where you're looking at all of your campaigns and what content each of those campaigns is looking at on your website. We've actually gone ahead and we've set up a dashboard for you which will merge a little bit of both for you. So you'll see all the users that are coming from any of your campaigns, and then it'll actually break down your campaigns to show you what campaigns are converting on your goals, how are people engaging with our website using our campaign tracked URLs. Again, this will be available for download here as well as when it gets emailed out to you. When you do download or import that into analytics, when you follow that link, it will give you a report or a view just like this within analytics. All you'll need to do is select which view or which analytics account view you'd like that to show up in as your campaign dashboard. Now, while dashboards are great for being able to go through and really get high-level custom information to consolidate all that data into a single place, what we really want to make sure for users like Rachel and myself who are diving into that data and going into the specifics of the data on a regular basis is to segment our data using campaigns. Now, what are we talking about there? We're talking about using the campaign information that we've set up as parameters in that URL to look at our analytics data, our analytics views, in a very specific manner. So what you can see here is this actually data from Texas A&M's planned giving campaign. They've actually taken the campaign content and segmented it additionally further by being able to say, I want to look at all information from users who are over the 60 demographic, or from the list that we sent an email to of couples and singles, or the email list of families. And then I want to make sure that I also look at things from an overall planned giving perspective with that last segment there. Segments are, again, wonderful because you can see how, based off of your content or the different elements that you build into your campaign tracked URL, are impacting the user's website behavior through analytics. So what we'll be able to see is that the over 60 plus is actually having the most sessions on our website at this point in time, but the families are actually spending the most time on the website, or the most page views, rather, are looking at the most pages. This goes beyond that because you can then validate what our data is telling us. If we got that list, we want to make sure that we can actually look at our demographics and say, does that list really match up with what we expected? Does that over 60 plus actually have the demographic of over 60 plus as the majority of the users? What does our demographics of our family groups look like? Does that include a larger male-female split? So on and so forth. Additionally, you can dive deeper using segmentation when it comes down to devices and all other reports that are available to you within analytics. So you can see, even though that we have the over 60 plus, we know that the families are going to be using more of their mobile devices to access that information based off our segmentation using that campaign tracked URL. And most significantly, like we mentioned with being able to establish what campaigns are actually going to convert, we can segment our data to see how our campaign converts at a different rate than the rest of our website traffic, or if we've used our content to help adjust, identify, say, people who click on the button on a page versus a hero image, or the Facebook traffic who's coming from a post versus a Twitter post, we can identify if each of those channels is converting at a higher rate than the other. Are they actually acting upon the goals we would like them to complete on our website? Now, there are segments that are available to you automatically when you are in analytics. This is system segments. There are segments that are most commonly used as the all sessions segment. That's the one that when you log into analytics, you will actually have all sessions as a segment already enabled. But you'll have all these things such as mobile traffic, direct traffic, etc. However, if you want to look at your campaigns, you just go ahead and click that red button in the upper left-hand corner, and you create a new segment. You can name that segment whatever you'd like. I've actually created one for you based off of all campaigns coming to your site, which will show you of all the campaign traffic coming to your site, what are those users doing on this site? However, you can make some slight modifications to this segment and look at specific campaigns. And what you would want to do is essentially go into this similar type of view, create a new segment, name it based off of the campaign that you are running, use the similar conditions of saying that we want to filter out and include all campaigns that you would just say contain rather than matches regex, and name the campaign there. And filter out not set, basically that's all traffic that's coming from other not set campaigns or campaigns that are not necessarily campaigns, all other traffic. But you can import that segment that we've already set up from you using either this link or the email that we send you after this webinar, and you will get a very similar sheet or a similar screen as to what you saw with the dashboard. And what that will show you is you can either select a specific view to put this segment or place this segment within, or you can place this segment in any view. I prefer to actually use this in any view so that I can use my information, my segments across all of my website analytics. However, if you have a specific campaign that is relating to only, say, your alumni view, you can place it within that view and just keep that information consolidated there. So having walked through segments, let's talk through a little bit of a case study and Rachel's experience with A&M.
Sorry, I needed to unmute myself. Segments, just to build off of what Ryan was saying, is probably one of my favorite things. Converge has really turned me into a data nerd, data geek, and I love going in there and playing with segments. I go in there and I create custom segments all the time, and that's where your spreadsheet comes into play. You can go in there, see what campaign you tagged what, and really mix and match. You can make if-then statements and or statements, things like that. It's really fun if you like to dig into the data and really get some idea of how your users are, your visitors are acting across your site. So really super interesting. So, I went too far. Okay. So a little bit about taking the things that Ryan was talking about and the individual pieces of setting up your Google Analytics and then segments and the campaign tagging, and kind of giving you the real world example here. So what we did at the Texas A&M Foundation was we were about to launch a new website. And so we went to them and we said, okay, we want to set up our tracking, make sure it's on point, make sure everything is coming through how we want it to. So what we did was we set up a project timeline and went through different phases with them so that we made sure that all of our information was coming in correctly. So we did Google Tag Manager is what we implemented with Converge. All of the data is stored within Tag Manager. You don't have to get into the nitty-gritty of the code on the actual website, go to your developers or anything like that. So I really would highly recommend looking into Google Tag Manager if you're looking to kind of refresh your instance of Google Analytics, or if you are implementing one from scratch. It's really fascinating. You can do lots of great things, really cool things, which I won't go into more here. Maybe we could do another webinar later talking about some more advanced Google Tag Manager things. So what we did was one of the really important things that Ryan was talking about earlier was really making sure you aren't showing up in your Google Analytics as being a referral to your own site. So here are all the different websites and all the different platforms that are pieces of our web properties were hosted on at the foundation. And I thought this looked crazy here when I was at the foundation, but coming to BenQ, it's even crazier. So I didn't have it that bad there. So looking back on fond memories now. So anyway, so we made sure we included cross-domain tracking so that we didn't show up as referrals. Then what we did was we said, hey, what do we want the website to accomplish? What do we want people to do there? What is success going to look like for us? So we went in and we said, here's all the actions that people could take that would mean success to us on the website. So then what we did was we took all of these and we narrowed them down to 4 different goals. We were a nonprofit. Our goal overall was raising money for Texas A&M. So number 1, donate. It's a no-brainer. Number 2, contacting us. The Texas A&M Foundation focuses on $25,000 and above donations. So people usually don't just whip out a checkbook and write a check for $25,000. Usually it's a conversation that happens over a period of time. So we can get those leads and bring them in the door and start talking to them. That's big for us. So number 2 is definitely contacting us. 3 was applying for a scholarship. We have, we have a number of scholarships that we would maintain ourselves. And so we would have applications for those scholarships on there. And then the Maroon Coats were our student organization. They came in and they met with donors. They helped at events and things like that. Really great group of students. And so one of the things was recruitment for the Maroon Coats, seeing how we could come in and get them to apply for the organization. So that's what we decided overall we wanted people to do on our website. So once we had those 4 goals in place, we went through and in Google Analytics, we set up all the events and things like that that would then say, this is somebody doing one of those goals, doing one of those actions that would mean a conversion for us. So we had a number of different goals in there. And then what you can do is you can go in the back end and see, this one's pulled from the emails. So we segmented out email in this example and say, this is the different places where people converted, the different ways that we measured success based on this particular email campaign for this particular slide and view. So then where campaign tracking comes into play. I even have an offline example I'm going to show you, but for the most part, when you think about campaign tracking, it's probably going to be online resources. Facebook posts, LinkedIn posts, e-newsletters, things like that are all driving back to your website. So anything, you really want to use campaign tracking when you have an outside campaign that's pushing people back to your website. So anything that has your Google Analytics tracking codes on the site, and you're pushing people back to that site, that's when you want to use campaign tracking. And I have some examples, some specific higher ed examples in my blog post that I've written for Converge. So let's talk about how I use those in the e-newsletter analysis. Ryan showed some of the different pieces of the Plan Giving newsletter. So I'm going to kind of show you what we did with those. We had the newsletter format, and what we did was we had a different email that sent out to each group of people. We segmented it about like 60 plus, singles and couples without kids. We found were really acting the same way, and then families were acting the same way. So what we did was we did 4 separate emails, and then we put together a list of stories that we thought would speak to those groups, and then we tagged everything. We tagged the header image, we tagged everything that was linked. So then if you tag the header image in your content as, PG newsletter header image versus that read more button that you see on the bottom right, you can say PG newsletter read more button for that particular story. You can even start to see how people are reacting within your own newsletter. Are they clicking on images, rather than buttons? Are they only looking at the first few stories? Are they clicking on the stories down at the bottom? What types of information are they looking at? So that's when all the tags really start to mean something, right? You can look at these things like desktop, mobile, tablet. No matter what you have, if you have campaign tags on there or not, that's general Google Analytics. So when the tagging comes into play, is really helping you realize what the different pieces of your newsletter mean, how people are interacting with them. So then what we were able to do is we were able to say, here's the different landing pages that people are coming to. You can then break it up and you can say, okay, I want to see the landing pages for the 60 over crowd. I want to see the landing pages for the families. Start to do that analysis on the traffic that's coming to your site. See where they're going, and then you can track them all the way through to conversions. Like Brian was showing you, you could see the 60 plus crowd really had a lot of conversions. They were, the newsletters were really speaking to them. So we also started doing things like, tracking the open rates, click-through rates, things like that. And we used industry standards from a MailChimp survey. Excuse me, I'm fighting a cold. My lovely 2-year-old niece shared with me. So when you go into your reporting, you can say, okay, you can break it down by month, and then you can also break it down further and say, I want to see how the 60 over crowd reacted. You can add a conversion column in here and really break it up by the demographics as well as the months, and start to chart trends and see how people are reacting and how their demographics differ. And that's where the tags are going to come into play and help you really segment that traffic. So we were able to then make recommendations based on the things that we were seeing. So for example, we saw emotional stories, historical stories were really getting the most traffic across the board. But you can break it up and say the 60 over crowd really wants to see those historical stories where maybe the younger alumni really want to see the athletics stories or things like that. You'll be able to, if you tag them correctly, tag them with the demographics, send them out correctly, you'll be able to segment that out and then make recommendations. So we say, okay, the 60 over crowd, we really want to put those historical stories in there because that's really speaking to them and that's what they want to do. It's all about personalization. And I think that that's not a new idea. It really people wanting to see things that are most related to what they're interested in. So here's another example where you can go in, you can compare the newsletter to the overall traffic, right? So you can say, here's the bounce rates and all of that kind of stuff. So you can pull all the data once you're segmenting in there, and you can really start to take that information and help you optimize your content and your send time, your send rate, things like that. So what we do for campaign, the tag labeled campaign in the tagging is at the foundation we had different ways that people donated, and that's what we called impact areas. So college impact was facilities, new buildings, new labs, things like that. Student impact or scholarships. Spirit impact is student organizations, and faculty impact is about faculty research opportunities. So as you can see, we would tag all the stories in the newsletters based on the impact area that they were. And then we can go in and say, okay, in the newsletter, college impact stories performed way above and beyond the other stories, which was really surprising. You can always think one thing, but the data is not necessarily going to show you that what you're thinking was right. I wouldn't have told you that people would be caring more about a new building or a new lab or something like that over reading about a student scholarship. So by tagging the different topics and subjects, even tagging your colleges and departments and things like that, you can really see the stuff that people care about, and then you can optimize based on that. So one thing I want you to be sure and do is not to forget about assisted conversions. So if somebody comes through and from your newsletter and they read it and then they make a donation right then and there, that's going to come up as a conversion. But you also have assisted conversions. If somebody comes to your website from the newsletter and they don't make a donation, but then like the next day, say they thought about it and they're like, that really spoke to me and I really want to make a donation. Maybe they Google your website or they Google the story or something like that, and then they come back and make a donation. So what that is if you go in the assisted conversions part of Google Analytics, it'll tell you that, the college impact stories did make a difference, and somebody left for a day or came back in a couple of days, and they later Googled, and then they came in and made that conversion. So you might weight that a little bit differently than a direct conversion, but it's definitely worth looking at saying, hey, these things are sticking with people, and it's bringing them back to then make a final conversion. So we did a similar sort of thing in social media. What we did was we were tagging all of our content the same way. So we were using campaign tagging and saying college impact, faculty impact, things like that. And we were pushing it out on social media. So then we were able to take an analysis and say, here's all the landing pages. And this is all the landing pages just for social. So we were able to go in and say, segment, so show me medium social. Didn't matter about any of the other pieces. We did a custom segment just to see social and see what stories overall in social media were bringing people in and then converting. So then you can see, okay, I want to compare by source. So since you tagged all of those things, all of your stories that you were pushing out there, you can see we had a forum that we were posting in Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Facebook traffic had a huge duration. A minute, 20 seconds compared to 8 seconds, 7 seconds, or even 12 seconds. That's a big deal. So we can see, okay, while the forums are driving a lot of people, they're not necessarily staying very long. So since we had been tagging them with the source and the medium, we were able to then compare them against each other and know where we should be spending our time. If Twitter's not moving the needle, if it's not making a difference, maybe you kill the Twitter account. And, please don't throw stones at me for saying that, but you only have a limited amount of time. And so you need to make sure that the time that you're spending it on things that matter and make a difference. And so if you're able to go in here and pull and say, social media really is moving the needle. We need to do more of that. Or e-newsletters are moving the needle. We need to do more of that. You can then take that to your department heads, your program leaders, and say, this is where we need to be spending our time and our money, because this is what's working, and you'll have the data to back it up. And that's where you can have the dashboards like Ryan showed you how to set up, emailed out to those leadership team members to help continue to prove the concepts that you're finding in your analysis. So we also were able to go through and look at the conversion rates and see, okay, the people that were staying there a really long time on Facebook also had really high conversion rates. But then even though LinkedIn weren't driving as many people, the conversion rates were even higher on LinkedIn than they were on Facebook. So we were able to take a deeper dive into there and see, okay, well, what types of content was it that were bringing people over? So this is Facebook, and we had a lot of conversions over here. So what we can see is that the giveaways had a huge goal completion and a huge conversion rate. So while it's not a direct donation, it's a lead generation opportunity. So we knew we wanted to keep doing giveaways. So here it'll show you the different conversions. So once you look at that and you say, here's the conversions that came in from each different piece, you can see what types of conversions it was. So here you can see the giveaways. You can see that Facebook was driving a lot of donations. You can see 21 donations there during this time period. You can see the email. That means that people were being emailed from the different pages, which, if you remember, contacting us was one of our big goals for the site. So there's a lot of variety here and a lot of different ways that we can see our Facebook audience was communicating and engaging with us. So it's a really huge thing. And we said, we want to continue to support this because here's the numbers that show that it's working. So here's some different information just on the different areas. So student impact was bringing in donations. And then you could look at the individual spikes and say, okay, 2 donations were brought in by Facebook student impact stories during this time period. Then you can go back to your Facebook account, look and see, well, what story did I post on that day in December? There was a student impact story, and then you can directly attribute it to that and say, here's the stories we posted, here's the donations, and we can directly tie the donation amounts to the stories on Facebook. And that'll help you plan in the future what things are really talking to people, speaking to them, and bringing them back to donate or other types of conversions. So we did similar things with Twitter. I think I'm going to skip forward a little bit to make sure that we had time. But we were able to go into Twitter, LinkedIn, things like that, and look at the same types of things. What type of content is bringing people in? What are they converting on? And then really optimize our content, optimize our stories and things like that we were posting to get the most engaged traffic through the door and get those conversions. So here's LinkedIn. It shows you something similar. And like Ryan said, he's going to send these out so you can kind of get a longer look at these, the different types of stories that we're bringing people in, college impact giveaway, things like that. You can see the giveaways from LinkedIn were really big converters for us. So we were able to take some takeaways from that. Facebook drove the highest traffic, the highest quality traffic, most engaged group, most conversions, things like that. The giveaway contests were really high conversions, followed by maroon coats, our student organization. So we knew our potential maroon coats were out there on social media. We knew that was a good way to work on recruitment. Then we saw that social media was bringing in more new visitors, but the visits were shorter and they would bounce more frequently. So it's getting people's feet wet, dipping their toes in the water of the foundation and getting to know us a little bit. So there's some brand awareness there too. And then 64% of the social traffic was mobile. So that told us, if you are driving people, the stories you're posting on social media really need to be mobile friendly and make sure you have a responsive site that people can get to and take a look at and even go through and convert easily. If you have all those people coming from Facebook and a lot of them are mobile and they're still having those high conversion rates, that's a good sign that your forms and things like that are mobile friendly enough to capture those leads. So then you can ask yourself questions like I was saying, is what you're doing, does it matter? What channels are you spending the most time on? Are they the ones that are bringing in the most conversions or the things that are most important to you? The different goals. Where are you spending your money? Does it line up with the outcomes that you're wanting and with what you're seeing? Are you spending the money where it matters the most? And so it really lets you take a look at your content strategy and your budgeting and saying, we need to make sure what we're spending and what we're spending our time on, as well as our content, is really what's driving people. It doesn't matter what I think it is, but it matters what the data is telling me it is. Sometimes that can be kind of hard to separate myself from, I really want to push this story, but in the end, the data shows it's not the right thing to do. So sometimes I have to burden myself with that as well. So then a little bit of on the offline to online, like we were talking about. One thing that we did in the fall was this thing called Bugle Call. There's videos in the football stadium that highlight a former student who's in the stands. Maybe it's somebody who hasn't missed a football game in 35 years. So it gives them a little bit of background about the person, says about their Aggie story, shows pictures of them on the big Jumbotron, on the screen, and then it shoots to a live shot of them in the stadium. Usually there's tears and hugging, and it's, one of the favorite videos of the football season. It's really all about the experience. So what we did was we were sponsoring Bugle Call, the videos, at the football games. At the end of the videos, we gave people the opportunity to read more about the candidate and also nominate their own Bugle Call. So what we did was we did campaign tagging. We put in all the tags. We said it was coming from, a sponsorship, and it was coming from the football stadium and things like that. And then we created a vanity URL. So I think it was the tx.ag/Bugle Call 2015 or something like that. And then as a short URL, easy to remember, without all the gobbledygook of all the tags in there, which definitely nobody would have remembered. And so it let people come back to a landing page that talked about the person and gave them the opportunity to nominate their grandpa or their dad or their brother, whoever, for the next game's Bugle Call. And the only way this worked was this is the only place that we were going to use it. I haven't found a URL shortener that allows you to edit the URLs, the shortener, after the fact. So you really have to have one page set up where you're going to put all that information, and we would update the page every week with the person who was featured that week. And then retire the previous week's person to a link off of the page so that we could reuse that link. So while we couldn't see based on which video people came from, we could kind of guess based on the date that they visited the page on what video was running that week. So I wasn't there till the end of the football season to really get an idea for how that ended up completely working out. So I'm interested to talk to my former colleagues and see what they ended up pulling on the reporting. Maybe Ryan can tell you. I know he's working with that group. Ryan, have you all done any reporting on the Bugle Call?
We have done some reporting on the Bugle Call, and I think it's been interesting to see that there definitely is a cyclical aspect where you see the spike on game day, and it actually tapers out throughout the rest of the week. So you still see some lingering traffic, people coming on Monday or Tuesday, etc. And the conversion information matched up very similarly, if I remember correctly, to some of the newsletter information. So we were still able to track all of the conversions through. We were still able to track the contact us, etc. And it was along those lines.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. And, I think one thing to note is that stadiums are kind of notorious for having bad reception for cell phones, and we really were only able to accomplish this in this particular setting in the football stadium because the university just went through a renovation of the stadium. I'm sure some of you have seen about it, over $400 million renovation of the facilities, and they included some mobile boosters from IBM into the rebuild so that people could really get good reception once they were at the game, and people could share things and visit websites and stuff like that without their phone dying, and things like that. So that's really the only way we were able to do that in that setting. But it would work in a similar way for other offline aspects, things like brochures, videos, stuff like that. You just have to make sure, like I said, that you don't need to edit the URL later, and that you can use it for that one application, and that you won't need to use it again later. So that would be the big thing that I would say to remember on that. I think that's all of mine, Ryan.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that experience with us, Rachel. One of the things that I did want to make sure I mentioned before the end of the webinar here, before we jump into questions, is that there are additional resources available on the Converge blog, both the information related to additional dashboards that might be helpful, very similar to the dashboard that we're providing today. Well, you can actually download dashboards and import them into analytics related to SEO, the digital advertising campaigns that you're currently running. Haley has done a blog on campaign tracking, and Rachel, I know your blog is going to be going live recently here as well. We'll be sending that out with the slides that are going to be sent out to the rest of the audience. And then we also have some information for most valuable resources. Of all the information that we've posted on Google Analytics, we've pulled together some of the top of the top, right? The best of the best, to make sure that those are all readily accessible in that link. If you found this webinar helpful, there are also additional webinars that you can read or listen to the recordings of on the Converge website, as well as the next webinar, which we're going to have Kat, the CEO of Hannon Hill, join us to talk about where you see yourself in a year and some trends in CMSs for higher education. To really compare websites and higher education websites from 2006 through 2016, different approaches and strategy changes throughout the years, and how visitor journeys have really changed throughout the years. So we look forward to having Kat on Thursday, February 25th for another webinar. And lastly, if you had the luck to join us for Converge 2015 in New Orleans, we will be doing it again for Converge 2017 in Palm Springs, sunny Palm Springs, where we're going to be going in February of 2017, so we can escape some of the, at least for ourselves, Iowa winter and go down to Palm Springs and talk about all the wonderful things about digital advertising for undergraduate, graduate, adult learners, and more for higher education. Before we jump off, I want to make sure we jumped into questions as well. If anyone had any questions, the information here is going to So, Danielle, and we're going to say, if you're new and broke to Google Analytics, is there free resources you would recommend to get started? Free resources to get started in analytics. I would say that there is some great blogs out there from Avinash and Occam's Razor. He's a great analytics advocate. We have our blogs as well. Also, I will throw a link or make sure that we include a link in when we email out the slides. There was a presentation that actually Rachel and our CEO, Ann Olson, did at the American Marketing Association conference in Chicago recently called inbound.converge.org/AMA that has some wonderful free resources in that as well.
Yeah, I would say Justin Cutroni is another good blog to look at. And Google Analytics has a bunch of videos and blogs and things like that for itself for Google Analytics. They have like a free Google Analytics Academy that you can go and look at all your information there too.
Excellent.